for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, once again I rise to call on the Ethics Committee to do the right thing, to release the outside counsel report on Speaker
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Gentleman will suspend. Gentleman will state his point of order.
Mr. Speaker, for several days in a row, the gentleman from Georgia has risen on the floor of the House to address matters that are inappropriate because the rules of the House specifically prohibit speaking of matters before the Committee on Standards. The gentleman doesn't seem to get that point, and on each occasion that I've raised this point of order, the Speaker has agreed with me. I'd like the Speaker to make a ruling on this matter today.
Mr. Speaker?
Does the gentleman wish to be heard on the point of order?
Well, if the gentleman is familiar with the rules, he should know the customary way to object is to ask that the member words be taken down.
Speaker, I think I have the right to make a point of order at any time.
The chair is prepared to rule on the gentleman from Georgia's point of order. The chair will repeat the admonition of the chair from yesterday, from September 12th, 1996 and September 17th, 1996. It is an essential rule of decorum in debates that members should refrain from references in debate to the conduct of other members where such conduct is not the question actually pending before the House by way of a report from the Committee on Standards of Official Conduct or by way of another question of the privileges of the House. This principle is documented on pages 168 and 526 of the House Rules and Manuals and reflects the consistent rulings of the chair in this and in prior Congresses and applies to 1 minute and special order speeches. Neither the filing of a complaint before the Committee on Standards of Official Conduct nor the publication in another form of charges that are personally critical to another member justify the references to such charges on the floor of the House. This includes references to the motivations of members who file complaints and to members of the Committee on Standards of Official Conduct. Clause 1 of Rule 14 is a prohibition against engaging in personality in debate. It derives from Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution, which authorizes each House to make its own rules and to punish its members for disorderly behavior, and has been part of the rules of the House in some relevant form since 1789. This rule supersedes any claim of a member to be free from questioning in any other place. On January 27, 1909, the House adopted a report that stated the following, quote, "It is the duty of the House to require its members in speech or debate to preserve that proper restraint which will permit the House to conduct its business in an orderly manner and without unnecessarily and unduly exciting animosity among its members," end quote. This is Canon's Precedents, Volume 8 at Section 2497. This report was in response to improper references in debate to the President, but clearly reiterated a principle that all occupants of the chair in this and in prior Congresses have held to be equally applicable to members' remarks in debate towards each other. The chair asks and expects the cooperation of all members in maintaining a level of decorum that properly dignifies the proceedings of the House. Therefore, the chair would request that the gentleman proceed in order.
Mr. Speaker, the outside counsel, James Cole, has prepared an extensive 100-page report on the Speaker's ethical violation. The American people deserve the right to know what is in that report.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Gentleman will state his point of order.
It's entirely possible that the gentleman in the well didn't hear you, or it's entirely possible the gentleman in the well doesn't know what the rules are. But I think you just ruled that he was speaking out of order, and I'd like to have the chair readdress his addressing matters before the Committee on Standards.
Mr. Speaker, let me say to my
chair, the gentleman will suspend. The chair sustains the point of order from the gentleman from Georgia and asks the other member from Georgia to please keep his remarks in order.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman will state his point of inquiry.
The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Linder, appears to me to try to make a point of order, and only on the point of order to silence the other gentleman from Georgia by having the chair not only rule the gentleman out of order, but to perhaps even make the gentleman sit down. I would like to know, is the chair aware of any example in the entire history of this House of Representatives where the Speaker has unilaterally silenced a member before his time has expired on his 1 minute without the consent of the House?
On September 12th and on September 17th of this year, the chair sustained points of orders against members who repeatedly made references in debate to a matter pending before the Committee on Standards of Official Conduct. On those occasions, the chair indicated that pursuant to the rules, such members could be required to take their seats where they declined to proceed in order at the directive of the chair after points of order had been sustained against their references. While the demand that an offending member be seated is normally insisted upon only where there is a formal demand that the words be taken down, pending disposition that the words be taken down, pending disposition of the matter by the chair and by the House, it is within the chair's authority under Rule 1 and Rule 14 to deny that member further recognition as a disposition of the question of order, subject to the will of the House on a question proceeding in order. A member's comportment in the face of repeated admonitions by the chair to proceed in order has itself been the subject of a ruling of the chair that the member may not be recognized to proceed unless permitted to do so by the House. That is cited on page 319 of the manual. Once a member has been recognized and has the floor, Rule 1 and Rule 14 permit the chair to respond to repeated points of order while permitting the House to determine the propriety of the chair's rulings and its willingness to permit the member to proceed in order. Thus, if the chair were to direct that an offending member be denied the floor for the duration of the time for which he was recognized, he would do so in the context of a ruling that would permit the House to determine whether the member should proceed in order.
For further parliamentary inquiry, it appears from your ruling, one, that there is no precedent of this House prior to this Congress of the action that you said is appropriate for the Speaker. That's number one. I asked if there was any precedent. The only precedent you have mentioned is just approximately a week ago, last week. Now, so it's of this Congress and within the last week, not any prior history of the whole United States. Number two, it appears from what you've said, even though you feel that you have the authority under that ruling to make any member sit down and appropriated for not following regular rules of order, that the ultimate decision upon a proper motion made is that the House itself has to decide, which has always been the precedent of this body. The House decides whether a member does or not the Speaker. Is that correct?
On the first question, the chair is not commenting on the historical precedent. On the second point, you are essentially correct.
Well, I just want to say I have been unable to find a precedent that you have listed from last week.
Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia may proceed with the balance of his time. Gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, let me say to my colleague from Georgia, Mr. Linder, I will not be harassed, bully, or silent. I know the rules of this House as well as you. But you know, Mr. Linder, I've learned in my life that there are times when the rules must be challenged to confront or dramatize an injustice. I will not sit down or keep silent until you release that report to the American people. Last week, Newt Gingrich brought an ice bucket to this floor to demonstrate a small cost saving achieved in the House. It is strange indeed that those savings are approximately the same amount as the cost of the report by the outside counsel.
Regular order.
Now the Speaker and the Republican in this House want to put the outside counsel report on ice.
The time of the gentleman has expired.
Wrong, just plain wrong.
Time of the gentleman has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?